So Amanda, what's your role here? You're a curator, trustee, is that right?
I'm a curator here and a trustee.
So what does that involve?
So on a day-to-day basis, it means putting on 2 exhibitions a year. And also the Stanley Memorial Trust is set up to really prolong the memory of Spencer and make sure that his work is known all around the world.
What's special about Cookham for me is that Spencer and Cookham are sort of woven together with a tightness that I can't think of anywhere else that is the equivalent of it. It's a special relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, as I'm sure you're aware, at the Slade, Stanley was known as Cookham because he insisted on travelling to London every day and then coming back home on the same train. And for me, the answer to Stanley's genius is this golden triangle of Cookham, religion and sex. And for me, those are the 3 things that really sort of encapsulate his artistic genius.
So let's start with the religion. He was brought up in a religious household, Methodist, I believe, is that right?
Yeah, and he worshipped here in this Methodist chapel. His father was very intent on Bible readings every day, so his biblical knowledge was extraordinary. And then I think later on, after the war, he came to form this much more idiosyncratic view of Christianity, and he fused it with other religions. So, it was originally quite conventional, I'd say, and then he drifted away from that later on in life.
I mean, you feel that with him, the religion had somehow soaked right into him, really deep. Even in the most innocent views he painted of Cookham, there's a sense in which they have a kind of ecstatic air to them. Is that just me feeling that?
Absolutely not, you're right. I mean, he said that Cookham is heaven on earth, and he called Cookham Churchyard a holy suburb of heaven, in the words of John Donne. So you're absolutely right. For him, Cookham was heaven, and everything for him was sort of this transubstantive experience.
So let's move on to the other big interest in his life, sex, which he seems to have come to, at least in real terms, quite late in his life.
Yes, I think you're right in that respect. When he met his first wife, Hilda, I think that's when he discovered sex, and he writes about it a lot. And there is this perception that he was this sort of sex-starved eccentric, but I don't think that was true. He writes about it a lot, but he certainly wasn't very promiscuous.
So what was he then, if he wasn't a sex-starved eccentric? Describe his relationship to it.
Well, he adored Hilda. He really, really loved her. And, I think we're going to talk a bit about the complications of that relationship. But even after he split up from Hilda and after she died, he wrote to her. He absolutely adored her. And she was his lifelong obsession and love.
But sex for him was what? It seemed to be almost a quasi-religious experience.
It was. And he did often fuse the 2 things rather eccentrically. And as we know, in 1929, when he came back to Cookham, having been painting in Berkeley, he met this lady called Patricia. And he saw her in a tea shop, and he felt all his Cookham feelings coming back. And he equated those Cookham feelings with sexual feelings and religious feelings. And so for him, seeing this very sexy, elegant Patricia fused into this incredible sort of Cookham religious sexual whole, and that really did it for him. And sort of around this time, there were great difficulties with Hilda. She was often in Hampstead. Her brother was gravely ill, and she was looking after their 2 children as well. So she was quite absent, and to my mind, Patricia took advantage of this, and Stanley would go and visit her in the evenings, and she'd open the door in sexy underwear and really sort of wind him up. But they never actually consummated their relationship, so there was nothing really to hide.
Is that so, though? Because in her memoir, you get the impression that the relationship was consummated, that there was kind of wild, passionate sex before they got married.
Yes, I suppose it's one of those classic things of perceptions may vary.
Well, who do you trust?
Well, exactly, who knows? And it's really difficult to get a proper understanding of any relationship, and in particular this one. It was so complicated. And to my mind, I don't think they did, because when Stanley and Patricia got married, Patricia went off on honeymoon with her friend Dorothy and left Stanley behind because he had a commission to finish. And that night he slept with Hilda, and that for Patricia was an ideal opportunity to say, we haven't consummated our relationship, that's it, I'm not going to sleep with you ever again. And that was the end of that.
But the other side of that, the other way you can understand it, is that it was a betrayal of the marriage, and that in a perhaps understandable anger,
Yes.
she'd kicked him out.
True, but there were events leading up to that which suggested that Patricia's investment in the relationship was maybe slightly more complex than we might understand. So Hilda had left, she'd gone to Hampstead. Patricia took over as Stanley's business manager, really. And in his, I don't quite know what, in his ardour, Stanley signed over the deeds of his house to Patricia. And ultimately, Patricia kicked him out of the house and rented it out and lived with her friend, Dorothy, with whom she had a lifelong relationship. So I don't think her interest was really in heterosexual love, necessarily.
Look at Stanley's paintings of her and of them together. Is it imaginable that those paintings could have been made by someone who hadn't had a sexual relationship?
It's a tricky one. I just don't know. He was certainly obsessed with her, and he was obsessed with her body. And I personally feel there's a sadness, you know, especially in the double nudes.
Certainly a complexity, certainly.
Yeah, and I think he's distanced from her. And there's a sort of very tragic longing in at least his face. You know, see that profile? I mean, there's deep sadness there, to my mind.